another exciting episode of People Orbit. Today we have with us Mr. Rajendra, Group CHRO from Suzlon. We welcome you on board, sir. It's a pleasure for us to be speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sugan. Thank you very much for having me today on this show.
Which is the topic of our conversation, which is pay transparency. Does open compensation actually work? Now, in recent years, pay transparency it has shifted from a niche workplace experiment to a critical policy debate across industries. According to a 23 report by PayScale, organizations with transparent pay practices, they see a 15% lower turnover rates compared to those with opaque compensation structures. Additionally, so as to say, the data that speaks from Harvard Business Review as well, it indicates that companies embracing salary transparency experience, they, higher trust levels and job satisfaction amongst employees. But while some argue, that transparency fosters equity and accountability, critics also warn that it may lead to internal tensions, talent poaching, reduced negotiations, etc. So, does open compensation truly create a fairer workplace, or does it lead to an introduction of new complexities? I leave the question open to you, sir. What is your view on this?
Yeah. So, Sugan, my view is that as we go along in years ahead, my sense is that the need for transparency on various aspects of compensation would actually go up. Now, the ask largely, and that's what I understand, would be that while people may expect the pay transparency to be there, but there's a difference in what the transparency organization must bring around and what should still remain little confidential. So what is important for the organization is to ensure that the procedural transparencies of how the compensation gets fixed. I think those are some of the areas which I think organizations should make it more clearer to everyone, so that an individual is able to work out that if I'm in a specific role or responsibilities, this is my way in which the compensation will get structured or it will get arrived at. However, when you look at the individual compensation, how it gets fixed up, there would be plethora of variables which actually differs from one person to other. That could be by way of the experiences that an individual had, the closer fit to a role, because in a real scenario you will never find a 100% fit individual. You would always find a variability between say 75% fit to 100% fit. Now those variabilities psychologically as an individual one tends to ignore, and one believes that I am a right fit for a specific role, and therefore I must get the full compensation, and therefore, I need to be getting this compensation which the role has fixed in terms of its fixed and variable compensation. If to really bring more clarities around, when we look at candidates from sectoral exposures, ability to manage teams, and then there are various layers. There are practitioners, there are experts, there are novices. So plethora of those layers you get when you get into the hiring mode. Now somebody may be very close in terms of people leadership, some may be extra capable in terms of the technical know-how of that role. Now, the choices that the organization makes are varied between what is right for that instance when you're hiring an individual. So there are a lot of variabilities that happens. So therefore, my suggestion would be that while the procedural transparencies we must bring around and have extremely clear clarities and we must communicate to employees, on the fixation of salaries, I would say that there are multiple tools available now, and these tools are typically the job sizing tools. Now, if you have done a job sizing for a specific role, then you relate a pay grade to that specific
The
job size.
productivity aspect, the productivity aspect that is actually linked to pay
Sure.
transparency? Do you feel
And
that there
yeah,
are any case studies?
so I was coming to that only. So I was coming to that.
Hmm.
So when you do a job sizing of a role, that job sizing, when we do, it is able to relate a base pay grade that for this size of a role, this is a base pay that an individual will get. On top of that, the variabilities now would begin with respect to how capable a person is to that job fit,
Okay.
how much of a technical know-how a person brings, and how much of productive that guy can be on a specific. So, shift the variability of the variable pay to aspects which are little variable in nature, link it up with performance deliveries so that a person, so there is a fixed base pay, and on top of that there are linkages with respect to productivity, effectiveness, etc., and link it with the variable pay plan so that an individual who is high on delivery gets a higher variable pay, somebody who's moderate gets a moderate, and somebody who's low gets a lower variable pay. So that's how these structures, I think, we need to create. Eventually, it's a social structure which which defines whether we need to be speaking about compensation openly or no. There would be internationally couple of geographies where uh, there is there's so much of clarity with respect to people speaking about each other's compensation so easily because they have been
Mm-hmm.
following that for 1700 onwards. But India as a geography is still very conservative about what how much we need to talk about individual pays, etc. So
Now,
it
when we're
probably
speaking that on leadership level, sir, we do think how much we need to speak about it. But if you see in a layman term, my colleague or somebody enlightening or sitting with me by my side in my group in any office where they would generally know what kind of a pay scale that we're taking from an organization. What kind of a difference does it make that employees discuss it internally, but on leadership level, it is still a question on how much does it need to be disclosed?
so fortunately because of the SEBI guidelines and the market regulations that are there, the leadership largely at the leadership level there is a declaration that in any case the organization makes at the top leadership level by way of disclosures on what CEO salaries are, CFO salaries are, KMPs and SMP salaries are. That's there. Now, a
Okay.
level or layers below, there is no such transparency which is governed by the regulations. Now, that's where I think the psychological and the financial play, which has to that we as an organizations have to take care is that the equity and the fairness, these are the two elements which are philosophically driving the culture of the organization. And as we go along, Gen Z kind of people, they look at their equity to be high. They need equity higher in the organization's culture and the fairness and transparency higher in the culture. So my belief is that it will become necessary for organizations to disclose a lot of things, and therefore I'm saying that at least to begin with, the procedural transparencies must be discussed and must be made clearer to everyone within the organizations.
While you say it is an aspect that to an extent it needs to be disclosed, but do you also feel that it influences a company's employer branding and attraction strategy? If yes, then how?
It does. It does. And I think
Okay.
today, if you look at the construct of organization where salary is still, disclosures of salary is still not considered as, a right, it's probably a taboo in the organizations. But if you say that, my organization is very transparent about how we work out salaries and how we arrive at the individual compensation, my sense is it'll actually be a differentiating factor with the rest of the organization. And if you ask me, my view would be people would prefer to come to our organization or the organizations which are far more fairer in such disclosures and their ways of working, than organizations which are not willing to disclose compensation. So, so the trend would definitely be in that direction. And Gen Z, being the larger population in times to come, my sense is that it will become inevitable for the organizations to be more open about compensation strategies.
Well, that you are clearly stating that it could be one of those facts which will help companies to retain employees also, and
Correct.
welcome Gen Zs with open arms, because
Hmm.
they'll be more attracted towards organizations which are as fair and transparent as yours
Hmm.
or any others who are adapting this model, that they're so clear and so transparent about the kind of compensations they're offering.
That's it. And I think,
Okay.
even in my recent experiences with the Gen Zs, they're far more vocal if they feel that, the peer competition in any way was a wrong fit that, we have offered to their peers. They're so forthright and they're so open about that discussion. So the responsibility lies on us as the senior leaders, HR leaders, to give them the
Okay.
complete awareness as to why did we do that if there was a differentiated compensation. Otherwise, I think you become into a category where they start to feel that you are unfair to them. And I don't think we need to tread that path. We need to be far more clear about our strategies with respect to fixing the compensation and talking about the fairness there.
Okay, fair enough. And in your view, do you feel that there are research indicating about the role of pay transparency in reducing gender and racial wage gap? That is actually a matter of concern amongst organizations when we spoke to some other CHROs also. So, what is your view on this? Do you feel that there are research indicating towards this new trend, and are there any statistical improvements in equal pay where transparency law exists?
So my view here is that there are two sets of organizations that you'll find. One
Okay.
which are falling within the structured organization or a organized company's structure. There'll be
Mm-hmm.
some who would fall in a unorganized sectors as well.
Fair
Now,
enough.
in a organized sector, my sense is that ability to differentiate between the a pay for basis gender would have very less anomalies. But on the contrary, if the companies and the sectors which are more unorganized, that can those organizations, those sectors will have probably a higher impact of this. The pay differentiation because of the gender or the racial differences, and because rules and regulations don't regulate these organizations, so the chances of basis the amount of time and effort that a person puts, there's a likelihood that the differentiations on the compensation can happen because of those reasons. So largely the disorganized sectors, unorganized sectors will have a higher impact of these issues, but in the organized sectors may not be as much. There's a likelihood, but not as much. Uh,
Concept of
so
pay transparency, in your view, sir, is it a fad? With time, do you feel it is going to fade away, or is it some new trend that companies will have to adapt as they are adapting to new age tech also in HR?
I think and I'm saying that the generation which is coming by, in their DNA, they look forward to a lot of transparency and fairness in the ways that the organizations operate. It'll become
Okay.
inevitable for organizations to definitely have policies and practices which makes it more transparency with respect to the procedural things for sure. But how much a individual gets kind of compensation, that may still may not get as much transparent within the organization, that everybody is talking about each other's compensation. It actually puts a lot of pressure on the organization as well to bump up the compensation for employees because they feel that the peer of theirs is getting higher than them. So when it is that kind of a comparisons happen, the emotive reasons take over the logical reasons, and that's where the I think organizations would come under pressure to, for the sake of retention, to reward differently an individual. So those are the cons of bringing pay transparencies. The
Mhm.
maturity has to be a two-way process. It can't be a expectation only from the organization side that they need to be transparent. Employees also need to become far more emotionally mature to be able to have those kinds of conversations, and be ready to accept the right logics to say that why you are at a level which is lower than others. So it's a maturity required from both ends. Otherwise, it can create some kind of a dissonance as well. So these are the uh, possible fallouts.
While you've clearly stated an outlook of what pay transparency can do, the cons and sir, the positivities, but does it also impact internal mobility? Are employees more likely to push for promotions also and consider leaving if they feel that they are unpaid? Because then the competition, there is no stoppage to competition. If I
Correct.
know that my colleague is getting an X amount of salary, which is, let's say, 10% higher than what I am taking, performing same duties, here the concept of pay equity also comes, in terms
Yeah.
of the aspect of gender also. So do you feel the internal mobility will also rush towards, exceedingly asking for promotions on, let's say, quarterly basis?
So there, my view would be that the more clarities that we bring around, more logical ways of working out the compensation that we work around, the mobility between one level to other, if the pay grades are higher, the transition between these two grades would equally become far more objective. The amount of rigor that will start to come in, that you are getting currently paid a X value for the deliveries defined. If you have to move to a Y position for a different deliveries expected, then the rigor between these two would also become far more stronger. So the whole transition from one role to other would also become equally objective. And if you ask me, my view would be that better it happens. Today, for emotive
Okay.
reasons, we start moving persons from X role to a Y role. But the more rigor, objectivity that we build up in this whole transition, it'll help both. It'll help employees in terms of being prepared for the next transition, and it'll also help employers because they are able to bring the right set of people into the right roles.
So do you then the question still remains, sir, while you say that it is going to be a trend that is going to be followed, but for now, do you think it is a mandate that companies should deploy, or they can still take time to figure it out on how to model this aspect?
I think earlier the better. So I think they can take steps. They can take some steps to begin with. Like I'm saying that, let's work towards a procedural, disclosures. Let's bring procedural transparencies far more open in the conversations. Then let's bring the fixed pay, conversations, in the way that we do the disclosures. Then let's do the productivity linkages with rewards, variable pay plans differently. So I think we need to start taking steps for a direction which will probably expect us to be far more transparent than what we currently do. Today, if you look at the pay ranges in most of the organization, the min and maxes, there is no correlation between min and maxes. The difference is so much that and it is because of various reasons of demand supplies that constrains the availability of talent. But it'll when you move to a transparent ways, it'll actually give you it'll push you to actually identify each role size from a level of competency. So more digital roles will have higher pay grades. And just taking an example, a new skill which is about to come in times to come, the future skills typically will have a higher pay. the current code may not rise as much. So the amount of science that the organizations have to start deploying in terms of working out the compensation and ranges, etc., would become far more objective than what it is currently. It is in the right direction. I feel that we need to move in that direction of pay transparencies.
Okay, fair enough, sir. I believe it's concluded in a holistic sense that yes, it's a trend also, but a trend that needs to be adopted by companies in times to come, slowly and steadily, in a graph that you've given. My last question, sir, with remote and global hirings on the peak, should companies adopt location-based pay structures or move towards standardized global salary model?
So again, same thing, and I think that kind of a structure exists even today. So if you look at the
Okay.
comp structures, you would find that the base pay, then city compensatory allowance, hardship allowance, there are various elements within the compensation detailing which are linked to these kinds of situations. So if you get, say, travel allowance is to help you travel a distance to come to office on a daily basis. And so I think on top of the base pay, the rest of the elements are actually enabling you to be effective. Now, a city compensatory allowance in Pune, Mumbai, basis the categorization of cities will actually differ. Now, if you are in a geography which is in a far-flung locations, you may have a lower city compensatory allowance. The hardship may be higher there, so you get paid that value there. So organizations have those kinds of structures, and we use that. Most of the organizations actually use those levers in terms of defining a remote pay. If a person is wanting to operate out of home, then the travel allowance may not be given. The city compensatory, would vary if a person is moving from Mumbai to an, grade B towns. The city compensatory allowance will probably lower down. So structures actually currently exist in terms of differentiating between a remote pay kind of a structure and a in-office, work from office kind of scenarios. So those structures actually exist even today.
So clearly, pay transparency is not one size fits solution, but it is growing adoption signals a shift towards greater workplace equity and trust is what I can feel from this discussion
Correct.
that's come up. I would
Correct.
also like to add to it that there are studies from PayScale of Harvard Business Review that showcase that transparencies lead to higher employee satisfaction and reduced wage gap as well. For organization, the key lies in balanced transparency, a term that I took out from this conversation, which offers clarity on compensation frameworks while maintaining
Yeah.
flexibility in decisions. Gen Zs, of course, as you clearly said, they're making large amount of workforce in times to come and even today. So they are more attracted towards organizations which are more
Yeah.
open and you know,
Correct.
conducive in an environment wherein they're flexible enough to mold their policies. The policies are not that
Yeah.
such that in traditional thinking way कि जो चलता आ रहा है वो चलता आ रहा है. But
Correct.
are moving towards, as you rightly said, that companies are moving towards a trend wherein they're ready to be flexible in terms of what policies
Mm.
they offer to their employees. Whether full disclosure or structured transparency, that's the right approach. But that
Correct.
depends on the industry dynamics and the company culture as well. So
Yeah.
thank you so much,
I
sir.
think we
It
have to
was.
move away from the taboos that we had set. That
Mhm.
the you don't ask men's salary, you don't ask anybody's salary. Those are the taboos. I think they were relevant for the times of the past. It may not remain relevant in the future. So we need to be prepared for that.
Indeed, indeed. I believe now that we have discussed this such an intriguing and an ongoing kind of a topic for organizations to actually view and structure. The ones
Right.
that who were also thinking of this discussion, I feel they would have received a kind of structure even if they want to start. How should they start? So thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure speaking with you, hearing the insights and the knowledge that you've imparted. For all those hearing this session, if you have any more queries, if you want to discuss any more strategies, you can feel free to drop comments in our comment box on LinkedIn. Mr. Mehta would be really feeling great to answer those queries since he has got mastery into this aspect now. Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
It's been a pleasure, Sugan. Thank you for having me once again, and best wishes. I'm happy to respond to any queries that your audiences may have. They can reach
And I'm
out to
sure they're
me.
going to flood you with questions because that is a topic of trending generation into the HR space.
Hi.
So thank you so much, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care. Bye.